So I have just restarted. I'm hoping this isn't going to mess with the link. I'm just going to drop a note in the YouTube channel. I clearly have some sort of issue with my microphone, so apologies. I'm just going to drop a note in. Gotta love technology. I'm just going to check Facebook. Okay, I can see. I'm just going to check the volume on. It's not going to plan, guys. Hang on a second. I don't know if you can hear me on Facebook. Okay. Right, it looks like Facebook is good. I'm just going to drop a note on the YouTube channel that we've switched to a new video. I'm hoping you can see. I'm just going to add a quick comment there. I can. Sorry, and then we'll get started. All right, just give me 1 second if I can add a comment. Okay. If you're in the new YouTube video, can you hear me okay? The sound seems to be working fine on Facebook. Just going to quickly see if I can hear myself on YouTube. I think it might not let me hear me whilst I'm talking, but if you can let me know, that would be great. Excuse me. Just hoping you can hear me okay. In fact, what I might do is, you can hear me, yes. Whew, okay, thank you. Right, we're going to get started. Apologies if, well, for the confusion, but hopefully you've seen the comment and should be live on Facebook. So let's try and sort my microphone out for next week. Okay, right. I'm all thrown off now. So today we are going to talk about yoke splitting. I've got my double knit cardigan yoke here, which is ready to split more or less. And I also have behind me, this is my round yoke sweater where I've split the yoke and I've started working on the body. I basically finished off the ball that was here. So what I'm going to do, I've lost all track of time today, so I'm a little bit behind with everything. I'm just going to crochet up to the yoke split. So while I do that, I just want to address a question that came in this week, which was somebody went to split their round yoke and they wanted a little bit more space at the front than the back for the bust. So when they kind of split it by trying it on, they had quite a big difference at the front than the back, and they were saying how they were looking at their sweaters that fit them, and in those sweaters they tend to lie flat, you know, front and back, and often with off the peg type garments, that's the way they come. There's a slight difference because the kind of fabrics you're using with off the peg sweaters are a little bit different, so the way they stretch and move is quite different. So whilst crochet replicates that in some ways, it doesn't tend to have that elasticity unless you have specific stitches. So if you have more at the front than the back, then that's okay. I'm going to come to talk about bust and body shaping in a little while, but I just kind of wanted to get that out there, and then I will come back to that as we progress. So if you've managed to join us online, do just let us know how you're getting on, where you're from. If you have any questions, then please drop them in the chat. Just so you can see what I'm doing, I'm just gonna, it's been cold today, so I'm a bit crocheted up. I'm going to show you what we're going to do with this cardigan if you're new to splitting yokes. So this cardigan's a little bit different because obviously it's a V-neck. So these front pieces here look a bit different. So you can see I've got my running stitch markers in, these pink bits. These just mark the increases on the raglan seam. So this is the back panel, this is going to be the shoulder, and then this will be the front. So essentially this is backwards. I haven't tried this on. I was really good. I thought I'd wait to do it whilst we're talking. So essentially what you do when you split the yoke is you fold it over like that. Found it. Hi Sylvia, sorry about the confusion. It's been one of those evenings. I think my computer's trying to tell me it needs a holiday or something. Okay, so basically the yoke splitting, we're going to fold that over. This section here is going to become the sleeve. So that's that section. We're going to work around the front section here, make our underarm chain to give space, work around the back, underarm chain, and then around the front. And that should hopefully give us a nice fitting yoke. It's just saying, I haven't tried this on yet. I've been really good. I do worry about my tension with this yoke, even though I've gone down to a 3.5mm hook for the double knit, which has then allowed me to relax my tension, but I do worry I've relaxed my tension. So I had a quick look at the instructions, but this is going to be a little bit of a play it by ear one tonight, as we've already illustrated by the sound, fun and games. I think next week I will bring my earphones and microphone, just so in case there's something wrong with my computer microphone. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to work extended single crochet up to and including, I'm on this section of the pattern, up to and including the marked stitch. I hope you all got to grips with the marking and the kind of counting off against the chart that we discussed last week. So in this, I'm working on the double knit and I'm working the size small, and I get to chain 7 for the underarm. Just a quick note about wrong and right sides. If you've seen this week's little vlog that I posted on Thursday, I showed splitting this yoke on there, and the importance of making sure you kind of fold it one way, not one way then the other when you do the second sleeve. But I want to talk about wrong and right sides briefly here. On this particular pattern, there is no wrong or right side. I'm just going to tip that down a little bit, really, until you split the yoke, because it's worked in the same stitch in rows back and forth. You know, each side is different. I'm going to make this my wrong side because this is where my yarn ends are. But if one side looks a little nicer, if you've got maybe a pull or something in one side, then you can choose. But just once you split the yoke, just make sure you stick to it. Pop a stitch marker in or something. Okay, so I have worked along this front edge. I've got to there. I'm going to chain my 7. I'm going to skip this bit. It's always good practice to count. I'm not going to do it here because you don't need to watch me counting, but it's always a good practice to just count the number of stitches on your sleeve to check it matches what the pattern is saying. So that should match the number of stitches it instructs you to skip, which is 40 in this case. So I'm going to do my chain 7. You can, when you're doing this, pop stitch markers in where you're going to join it. So I could put this is upside down now, but I could put a stitch marker in there and there, just so I'm I know I've got my folds the right way round. But I'm clearly winging it today, so I'm not going to do that. So I've worked up to the stitch. Let's just check you can see me. Let me just check that 7. 1, 2. Okay, so that's my 7 chains. I'm going to go to the next marked stitch, and my little running stitch markers, which were just, these are actually scraps of yarn from a skein of handmade. These are the bits that are used to tie the yarn together when you have a hank and you have to wind it, but they seem to be the perfect length. So I'm literally just going to put an extended single into that marked stitch, and you can see there's my little armhole there. Then I'm just going to work all up and along the back. My finger has now recovered, so I can crochet again properly. I don't know if you saw that. I sliced my little finger open earlier in the week, which was not fun. Okay, let me just see. We've got some comments while I'm doing this. You can hear me. Donna from Michigan, hello. Nicola from BC in Canada. I'd love to know where you're all at, whether you've split your yokes, whether you're having issues with the yokes, whether you're flying and you're onto the body and you're here for body shaping chat. Yeah, let me know how you're getting on. Also, let me know if you are still keeping an eye on your gauge. I think I started saying earlier and I got distracted because I'm a bit discombobulated after the technical hoo-ha. I worry that my gauge is getting a bit loose again in this. It must just be this yarn. But if it is, I will show you how we can think about adjustments. I'm not overly worried about this cardigan being a little oversized in the shoulders. When I add the button band at the end, if there's too much space kind of around the neck, it's a really sneaky way to reduce that if you've got a bit of extra space there. So, Nicola, just coming to the end of your yoke. Excellent. That's good timing in that case. I'm just coming to the end of this row. Just going to, I can't talk, think and crochet all at the same time. I can talk and crochet, but having to function with my brain isn't ideal. Donna, we've got you from Michigan. Lots of US folk this afternoon, I guess, for you guys. Maybe even this morning. No, it's going to be afternoon for you all now, I think. Okay. I'm going to have some more practices before next week and see what my computer is playing at. We've got a hungry cat in the background as well, so apologies if you can hear her. Come on then. Saying hello. So when I get to the end of this yoke, I'm basically going to chain 7 for the underarm stitches. I know what I wanted to tell you about. Underarm stitches, underarm chains. So these are a really good way to adjust both the circumference of the bust and the circumference of the bicep. The kind of pitfall with that is it adjusts both. So if you just want to adjust the bust, but not the arms, not the bicep, this section, then the underarm chain might not be your friend. Although what you can do is, if you're just adding a couple of stitches, you can change the way the decreases are worked. So you can pop a decrease in, immediately on the first line of the sleeve, for example. But in terms of the length of underarm chains, a little tip I heard is that a rough guide to the amount of space you want here, because this is really where the underarm chain, it's like if you imagine your body as a sort of cereal box type shape, this is the sort of narrow edge there. There are guidelines, and they're rough guidelines, that length is proportionate to about 8% of your total bust. This comes from knitting resources, but it's quite a good rough guide, especially if you're winging it. It's quite a good rough guide for how many stitches you should have under there. And obviously it depends on a lot of things. It depends on the pattern, but if you want a starting point, that's quite a useful little number to have in your toolbox. So I've changed my set. Oh, hang on. I didn't change 7 at all. This is what I mean about talking and crocheting. I just went straight on without doing a chain. Okay, so I'm going to chain 7. And then I'm going to fold that there and work into the next marked stitch. And then I'm going to keep going to the end. Now in this pattern, if your bust is a bit short at the front, if you want more over the front, you can actually just kind of keep increasing at the end of the beginning of the rows, as that will take this V-neck bit, it'll kind of keep going across. So that's a really easy way to add a bit of space to the bust at the front. And I think the front is often, where we need a little bit more space, or it's nice to have a bit more room, especially if you're adding buttons. I have a real thing about when buttons pull over the front, in a cardigan or a shirt or anything like that. It's just a little pet peeve that I've got. So I'm almost at the end of this. I'm just going to check in the comments. So Sonia, you split the yoke. Think you might do a bit of body, bit of sleeves, etc., to manage the amount of yarn you've got. That's a great idea, Sonia. So I'm going to do that as well with this sweater. The yarn that I've used for that sweater is leftover yarn, and it took more on the body than I expected. It doesn't go very far. So what I've done there, I've just finished off the ball that I was working on in the body, and I'm actually not going to do any more of that until I've done the sleeves, till I'm happy with. I'll show you what that looks like in a bit as well, because I'll use it as a demo to show where you can add some shaping if you want to. But for now, I'm very nearly at the end of this row, and then we'll try this cardi on and just hope that I've been practicing what I've been preaching. Sylvia, just ready to split. The gauge is good. Good to hear. So you're all making good progress by the sounds of things, which is excellent to hear. Right, 3 more stitches, 4 more stitches. Sorry, this isn't the most riveting, I know, but once it's done, it's done. Right, so there, I'm just going to pull that right up, is my split yoke. Let's show it to you properly. This is where I find out I've done it wrong, because I've been chatting away. There's my sleeve, my underarm. So we're going to pop this, I'm going to turn it the other way around just so I don't drop the ball of yarn on the floor. Oh, let's hope I haven't twisted that. So there, oh, look at that. that makes me happy. So this is my split yoke. I'll just stand up so you can see the back. So you can see I've got the arms in this. I've got a decent amount of space there. The arms in this, the sleeves, sorry, are kind of relatively fitted. I've got a lot of stretch in this fabric. So, and obviously I know it grows with blocking. So I'm quite happy with that. I could, you know, when it's been up, you can see this sort of pulls apart, but it's quite a nice close fit around the back without being too much. Yeah, I'm quite happy with that. I was worried it was going to be a bit big again, so that's always a bit of a relief. So that is essentially yoke splitting. There's really all there is to it. What I tend to do typically when I'm splitting a yoke, you can try it on at this stage, but I tend to work a couple of rounds of the body before trying it on, because you know this doesn't give you a huge doesn't give you a great idea of how it's gonna work up. Sorry, my cat is having zoomies in the background, so I'm really sorry if you can hear crazy noises. What I'm gonna do now, I'm just gonna try this one on. Again, I tried this on after like one row of the yoke, which I showed in my vlog. And then I just finished the ball of the yoke and I haven't tried it on since. So let's pop it on now. Somebody asked, I think last week, about the joining chain, like the seam, and I'm looking at, so I can see it just there. It's quite hard to see when it's close up. It's quite obvious on the camera. What I tend to do is just put that at the back, and that's how I tend to tell the difference between the back and front. So here we have my yoke. So I'm gonna just talk through a few things that are like classic of round yoke sweaters, and to an extent it applies to the cardigan as well. Let me just have a sip. So this is quite a nice fit on my arms. I've got quite a lot of space here, and I've got quite a lot of space here at the back. Something somebody asked is about when you're working around yoke sweaters, you can see on the hanger it has quite a round, you know, this sort of swoopy shape carries on, and they were worried it was going to continue and they'd have that sort of round shape there. But actually, and you can sort of see as you work it, it will straighten out. So I've got, you know, a bit of a rise up here from where the I've got an extra row here. That's where my yarn ran out. But as you work the body, the weight will drop it down. What I could do in this, got little folds there when I put it in. I've got quite a lot of space on the back. This is quite common, and this is why there is a school of thought about doing short rows at the back of the yoke after the yoke split, which I don't, it's not something I've done. I can't quite get my head around how that would work. I'm all for short rows at the back neck. That makes a lot of sense to me. I need to do some more research into this short rows at the back body, because it's not something that my brain doesn't feel intuitive. But I'm going to talk about adjustments. So if I wanted this to be quite a fitted sweater, I'd probably want to take a bit of this in. I've got quite like a dippy back, and because there's no shaping, you can see I've got quite a bit of excess. So there's a couple of things you can do with that. You can separate it off. So when you split the yoke, you can put more stitches at the front and less stitches at the back. So I could have split my yoke maybe here, you know, brought a few stitches round to the sort of the front of the, that's very crude, but brought them round to the front of the sweater. That was what the question I had was about. It was about, how do you know how to distribute those stitches? The answer is trial and error. So the person in particular was saying they've got quite a big bust and they wanted more space at the front. And I think it was, I wasn't sure which yarn weight they were working, but I think they said it was, they tried it on and sort of roughly split it where they thought was about right. And it was 80-50. So 80 stitched at the front, 50 at the back, which seems like quite a big difference. But actually, it's 30 stitches. So you kind of got if you split it in two, it's actually 15, but you're taking 15 from the back and adding it to the front, but which gives you 30 difference, if that makes sense. So it does seem like quite a lot.
I didn't get that.
Sorry, Siri, just technology's against me today. So my answer to that, there may be other ways to do it, is try it and see. I think if you're bringing more to the front for the bust, and if you want to adjust the bust, so you want it to come back in, so you've got kind of more space here, and then it comes into fit kind of around the waist, you want to actually start your decreases roughly mid bust, so not too long after you split the yoke to start decreasing, because, and I'll come on to decreases here, and what I say about decreases, the same is true in reverse about increases. When you're making them, and I'll go through some different places where you can place them, spread them out. Don't do them like stacked, and don't do them row after row after row, because you'll end up with some odd stuff. There's a slight caveat about stacked, but so the first classic place to decrease is at the underarm, and you can see I could probably do with a bit here. You can see I've got a little bit of extra, so I could pull this back and maybe start 2 rows into the body and just put a decrease at the underarm. If you're going to do that, stick a stitch marker in the underarm and make sure you're doing it equally on each side. Place the stitch markers that are your friend if you're changing increases and decreases. So I could maybe do 2 decreases at the underarm, normal round or 2 normal rounds, then another 2 decreases, and do that both sides and just see how that starts to pull it in. That would probably be enough for this sweater. This is Aran weight, so there's not huge amounts of stitches. That's one way of doing it. The other way, so you can put them at the underarm there. The other way you can do it is you can essentially create 4 points of decreases. So I could put decreases here, so just either side of the underarm chain, rather than bang on where the side seam would be. You could put them here and here, and that gives you a bit more flexibility. So for the back, for example, if I wanted this back to pull in, I could leave the front as it was and just pop a couple of decreases maybe here, and that will, I mean, obviously it pulling tight now, but that's because I've got my arms forward. And actually that's a good thing to try, like move about in it, because you don't want to put a decrease and then it's too tight, because there's nothing worse, especially here, there's nothing worse than uncomfortable sweaters there. Okay, so that's the second one. So you can underarms, use the 4 points. You can also do under bust increases, so there's a couple of ways to do that. You can like position them so you can have darts, and this is what I was saying about starting sort of mid boob. You could distribute them a few evenly every few rows, depending on your yarn weight and your row gauge. But you have to be a bit careful about doing that, because you can end up with like a shelf, and it can look like, I've done that. I've decreased like the same way you would when you make a hat and you have a flat circle. I've essentially used those decreases. It's not good. It's not a good look. So just be really gentle and keep an eye on how it's going. The other decreases that I've not experimented with but work in my brain is to use short rows. So is to essentially put a few short rows through the front bust and then leave them here. So maybe start with something sort of here and then wide. And what that essentially will do is it will create a side dart there. So that, again, it's not something I've experimented with, but I know, you know, if you look at any tailored shirts and stuff, they often have side darts. So working short rows just across the front would, according to my brain and logic anyway, be a way to create those side busts. So bust is probably the most common place people increase, but you know, if you want to do it, you know, for the side, and then you might want to increase at the hips as well, so you can do that in reverse. And I think, you know, if you wanted to, you could work out, so say I wanted to take off, I don't know, 2 inches from under bust to waist. I could use my gauge, and I've got a blog post that explains how to calculate number of stitches based on your gauge. So if I had, 10 stitches per 10 centimeters and I wanted to decrease by 4 centimeters, that would be 4 stitches. But I've got a post which I'll drop in the comments about how to do that calculation. Obviously with 10 stitches, 10 centimeters, it's easy, but if you have different numbers, there's quite a simple formula that you can work out, and then you know how many stitches you've got to reduce, and you can make your decision about where you put those decreases. Likewise, if you want to increase, you can work out where you do that again. Okay, let's have a quick look at the comments. Okay, so if larger busts and biceps, do a few more chains. Yeah, if you want both more space at the bust and the underarm, stick some more chains in. You can then decide if you're putting more chains in and you just want more space at the front, make sure you add those extra space at the front. So you're going to want to, because if you just put the chains in here, let's say you add 5 extra chains on each side, so that's 10 stitches altogether. When you actually split the yoke, you're not going to want to add any extra here, so make sure those 10 stitches are at the front, and that's where you'll get the space. If you just put it at the sides, that extra space will be round, like equally round the front and back. So if you want more at the front, split the yoke asymmetrically. I hope that makes sense. Can you do the bust extra again? Vicky, I'm not sure if I've just answered that question with the bust extra. I'm not sure which bit was it, the short rows, or yeah, let me know which bit you wanted me to go over. Sonia, love crochet for trying on ripping back, so much easier than knitting. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And actually the great thing about top down, yes, you have to make accommodations for blocking and any differences that will make, but top down's so good like this, because I might go back and put a couple of having tried this on, I think I might stick a couple of decreases here, just for a slightly closer fit. In fact, what I think I'll do, I'll leave them at the front and I'll put them place them around here, and that will just pull that in, and it will just take that little bit extra off at the back. What I was saying about this bit, and like I mentioned hats, like when you crochet a top down hat and you do a flat circle and then you stop increasing and it straightens up at the side. I don't think I have any hats to show you, but I'm sure you've all made a hat like that. When you first stop increasing, you've still got that kind of round bit, but by the time you get to the brim, it's a straight line. So the same principle applies with these yoke sweaters. So it will straighten off, even though it looks kind of curved at the moment. And also just the weight of the fabric as you work will start to kind of pull it down, especially when sleeves. What I meant earlier about if you increase the underarm chain, but so this is quite a close fitting sleeve, like that's quite neatly tucked around my underarm. I could add some chains here to make it looser, but that would increase the bust, which I don't need to do anymore. But if this was a bit big, if it kind of came down to there, I could just change the cadence of the decreases. You have to be a bit careful, otherwise you get essentially like a little bingo wing in the fabric, which I've done that before. So again, whenever you're doing decreases, space them evenly. Don't put too many too close together. I was going to say there's a caveat with that, and that is if you want to do like a more pronounced bust start. I've never done this successfully because I haven't had the need to for my body shape, but you could kind of stack a few increases here, like again in a tailored outfit you kind of can see you've got those under bust darts, and you might only need 2 decreases on 2 rows. It's often less than you think. yeah, so that's the only time I would go with stacking them. But again, I would probably be more inclined to, you know, maybe stagger a few decreases kind of around the side. And you can even I was chatting to a crochet friend about this, and they've got quite a big chest, and they wanted more decrease so it really fitted underneath, and they kind of evenly distributed, and actually it was them that said start the decreases around kind of mid bust area, and that will lead to a more gentle, non-shelf like shape. Okay, I've got my little note. I'm actually going to write a blog post at some point about body shaping. This is my little cheat sheet that I scribbled out earlier in the week. I really wanted to write the post this week, but I've got my new collection, which is sitting there coming out next week, so I just haven't got to it yet. The other thing you can do is increases. I had a question recently about maternity sweaters. Now, I don't have experience of making maternity wear, but you could essentially, if you wanted to go the other way and put an increase and make something quite A-line and quite swingy, which you might, especially if you're making a more like lightweight sweater that maybe you want to wear in the summer, and actually you want to go here and just go out, you can add increases in the same way, or you can add you could maybe even add a pleat if you wanted to, where you just, you know, keep stacking the increases on top, and it creates like a kind of ruffle. So that's an alternative if you don't want to decrease but you want to increase. Yeah, pleats are, I'd like to see more pleats in crochet. Anyway, so really that's kind of what I wanted to go over today. Vicky, I hope I've answered that question okay for you, about the bust shaping and about the yoke distribution. If you missed it, it was basically try it and see, and if it's a big difference, it's a big difference, and that's okay. You know, we're not I actually never understand why so many women's clothes are made symmetrically, because obviously there are standards, and nobody's really, or there are very few people that actually meet the exact standards. But this is why I like to talk about this stuff, so you can make something that fits your body. Yeah, okay, I won't get on my soapbox about that, but yeah, it's like learning how to adjust and the shape that you like. That's the key to it, rather than just following standards, because, you know, most women are not the same on the front and back. So we've split our yokes. This week the plan is to work on the body and then start on sleeves. The sleeves are all slightly different in this. Sleeves are an interesting one when you're grading a garment, because in the different standard sizes, so this pattern goes from extra small to 3XL, and the way you have your arm, you've got your bicep and your wrist. Now, in different sizes, I might want to shrink my bicep to my wrist, but that kind of cadence of shrinkage is different. So it's not like with different sizes, you just keep adding an inch to there and add an inch to there, because that's not how the body works. So when you start looking at the sleeves, particularly for the finer yarns, it might look a bit confusing, but you can really customize it to your own preference on these sleeves. I think with this sweater, I'm going to go for 3/4 lengths. I also think I might put like a contrasting rib cuff on it just for a bit of fun, but we'll see when I get there. So don't be intimidated by the sleeves, because I use quite a different cadence. I use kind of more increases at the start, and then it slows down for the forearm, but you can really customize it for how you want. So I think that's me just like dumped, like brain dump for you. If there are any questions, pop them in the chat. I might just quickly grab that link on how to calculate your stitch count. So if any of you are doing, I hope you can still see me while I just browse. If any of you are doing adjustments and want to think about specific numbers, you know, and specific measurements, then okay, I've just dropped that link in the chat, so hopefully you can see that okay. I've just seen my name's disappeared from the chat. That's interesting. Okay, any more questions? I know it's Eurovision in the UK, which I'm going to go and watch with snacks. Oh God, I can't even talk anymore. So yeah, I think we'll leave it there for this evening. Any more questions, drop them in the chat. I'm so sorry about the weird issue with the sound and then me having to restart the thing today. I'm going to look into that this week and hopefully we'll fix it for next week, but I don't know what's going on there. Okay, I don't think we've got any more questions. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your patience. You can always email me with questions, and I think one more tip before I go. Keep measuring. If something's way off, make your tape measure your friend. Keep checking your gauge, keep measuring, and you're going to succeed. It's all going to be grand. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll see you next week. Bye.